What's up, Breakfast Club? Thought we would tackle some post-election commentary from a conservative perspective, which I know is as rare as a unicorn in these parts. Even goes down like a jagged pill for a lot of the viewership, as I gleaned from the comments section, like, you know, this perspective shouldn't even be able to grace your eardrum. It's not even worthy of being heard. Now, that's not everybody, but I do find that hilarious and part and parcel of the macro problem we face, both as a nation and a world. That little soapbox speech out of the way, let's tackle some post-election commentary. Look, you know, anybody who says that they're happy, I like how both sides are spinning it, right? To be intellectually honest, that they're thrilled. That's not true. That's just politic, posturing and spin. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with seeing the silver lining in the situation, but it's spin nonetheless. The Democrats, they haven't tasted victory on their tongue in such a long time that even like the smallest drop, is like 24-hour energy or something. It's like the nectar of the gods. I think as the days have gone on, though, you see the sobering of what has actually transpired. And towards the end of the video, we'll explain even, just the projection and shadiness that goes on in these elections, if I can remember, to touch on that. But as far as a conservative perspective, to be perfectly honest with you, I obviously would much prefer that the conservative ideology be making decisions both in the House and the Senate. But if I had to choose, and this is me being completely honest, I would absolutely choose the way it went down, particularly for the things that matter to me. I think charting a course for the future of the country, protecting the future of the country, the ideological pillars of the country, the constitutional foundation, all of which I very, very much believe in. The courts, and this isn't necessarily a good thing. I mean, in many ways, I blame the left for having this new normal, because I don't think this would have manifested itself, directly from the roots of the tree of conservatism. I really don't. But the left has established that the legislation process almost become dinosaurish because it's like slow and it doesn't have the same sex appeal, and it's more annoying. So for decades now, the left has decided to legislate through the courts. Whether I like that or not, that's the reality of our situation. And the courts look like they're in a great, great place from my ideological perspective. And not just the Supreme Court, but federal courts. I mean, just the many, tentacles of that octopus or whatever is going to be solid, and I could not be more thrilled. That's playing chess, not checkers. That's the long game, and the more strategic leftists know it, and I'm just thrilled about that. It's just this is going to be something that my left-wing citizens disagree with, but in almost every way, be it financial, stable, safety, conservatives hold the water, carry the water for the leftist ideology. So the reason that so many things work and are stable is because conservatives do the heavy lifting. And then the leftist ideology gleans on the momentum of that common sense, legislation, and then they get to just criticize and utopic dream, ad nauseum. That's sort of the political, yin and yang thing we got going on. And in the case of the courts, is so true. I mean, the reason that we don't have mayhem and chaos is because one side is still the adults at the Thanksgiving Day table. And the left, and I'm talking about by way of being emotionally untethered, I'm talking about always thinking that their Johnny-come-lately idea is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you just blow up the foundations of everything because they're annoying and not new, or they're part of the patriarchy, or they were invented by slave owners, or God only knows what kind of ridiculous Marxist talking point their professor is feeding them. But, you know, if that stuff were to be indulged, we would all pay severe prices. So as annoying as it is to the left, to have conservatives win, and that in and of itself is something I'd like to touch on. How just basic, like, lack of... The left has developed this, like, inability to lose that is pretty breathtaking. I mean, you know, the majority of my adult life, my ideological flavors did not win at the ballot box. And largely because they did not deserve to win by way of presenting themselves effectively and competently to the American voter. That has completely inverted itself to my great glee. But the left, psychologically, just they've lost the muscle working, you know, the infrastructure in their mind, body, and soul to be able to handle a loss, to be able to contemplate and wrap their mind around the fact that their ideas lost, that their ideas are not favorable to the voter. They come up with every kind of scenario, right down to, like, unearthing our way of government. You hear that kind of commentary after every election now, that the Senate is now supposed to be dictated by the popular vote. That's their it's all just ways of avoiding what needs to happen, of course, after an election defeat, which is self-correction. I've said this in so many videos at The Breakfast Club. The Democrats need to self-correct, and they won't, because they continue to put this sort of balm on their wounds, be it Russia, fantasy fiction, or just anything they can think of, quite frankly. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's like a drowning man will grab any kind of driftwood, as long as it doesn't mean doing business with their ideological defeat and then approaching that, adapting that to the likening or the desires or the appetite of the American voter. No, that's not how the left thinks anymore. They think the voter needs to come to them. The voter needs to bend. The will of the people, the mindset of the people needs to change, not them. And that's why they're losing election. So in this way, this is another silver lining for me, because I really believe this, if the left would have lost the House, they would have had to do business with the fringe radicalism that's guiding their party. I mean, they have open socialists, communists, by way of ideology and talking points, as the rock stars of their party. I mean, they so desperately need to self-correct, but they don't see that. And I, even on this channel, I see these left-leaning people celebrating this. Even if you believe that, and if you believe that, I would love to discuss the merit of that sometimes in an ideological conversation. But even if you believe that, just on a political standpoint, just from a political standpoint, that's not going to float in the vast majority of places in the United States of America. But the left does not realize that what plays in the Upper East Side of New York is not going to play in flyover state America. And rather than calling flyover state America names and talking about how they're all racists and they're all a member of the KKK, maybe you're the one that needs to change. Maybe your ideas are fringe and radical. And I evidence you that JFK and Martin Luther King would have no place in your party. It's become so radicalized. You would call Martin Luther King what you call Kanye West right now. You would call him a tool of the white supremacists, because he wanted to move the country towards colorblindness, which was a beautiful vision that the left has completely ignored. And with JFK, you would call him a white supremacist of the patriarchy. Your party has radicalized. It's radicalized to such a degree that you either don't have enough self-awareness to know it, or don't care and want it to go that way. And if you do, make your comfortable bed when you do not win the favor of the electorate, instead of calling them every kind of name you can think of and thinking that the whole country just abracadabra after you lose an election, everybody and their cousin is a part of the Nazis. It's absurd. So as a silver lining to my ideology, moving forward, which of course I want, that's what is politics. The fact that the left is not going to self-correct, doesn't see a need for it, has no appetite for it, and because they won the House, there will be predominant voices telling them to move this, regressive, progressive, caveat of their party into positions of authority and power and visibility. To me, that's just wonderful. And I'm not just saying that as like a righteous burn on leftist ideology. I believe that. I think there's tons of electoral evidence of that. So that's obviously a silver lining. I also think just this is not something good, but I think on a political level, I think Donald Trump actually has a God-given ability to make deals. I think that's incredibly evidenced. So if the left has any sense to them at all, they will actually make a deal with this guy. Because the truth is, unlike the left, Donald Trump isn't even like an ideologue on the right. He's not. He's a New York City social liberal who isn't really tethered to any kind of ideological strand. He loves his country. He is a nationalist, which by the way is a wonderful thing. The left is trying to villainize the word nationalism, but nationalism is a wonderful thing. And I'll prove that you all think it's a wonderful thing because you all have sports teams that you vote for. You don't vote for like the entire MLS or the entire NBA. You vote for your team. And there's a lot of, maybe someday I'll make a video on how awesome nationalism really is for peace, for people. I know that's just absurd to the left. The left has it in their mind that nationalism equals white supremacism, which in and of itself is so stupid and moronic, by the way. But these kind of talking points get buried into the psyche of the left and they just spew them out like some sort of robo message. That's for another day. But, Donald Trump, I mean, he would, and in many ways it would probably frustrate me as a conservative, but he would do all kinds of quote-unquote compromising to get stuff done. The left, however, will be the ideologues. They'll want to, indulge their Russia, which is really just an excuse for losing an election, conspiracy theory nonsense, and they'll want to chase that catnip, and they will to their own political demise. And Donald Trump's a fighter, which I love. I love that about him. And he'll bloody his knuckles, get in the ring, and just rough them all up, playing their same game. That's very evident from the horse's mouth, quite literally. But I don't think they can help themselves. They have a base. They've radicalized their base to such a degree that that's all they want, is they want that chum in the water. I don't even think they care about anything else. I mean, literally, I'm not kidding. If they went in and negotiated with this guy, I think they'd get a ton of what they want on immigration. I think they'd get a ton of what they want on infrastructure. I think they'd get bureaucratic spending out the wazoo, which again, I wouldn't necessarily support. Other than infrastructure, I probably could see myself supporting that. And that's not ideologically pure for me, but I look around my nation and I see how badly they need it. And that omnibus bill that Obama claimed, the shovel-ready jobs, that all went to unions. All that money went to unions. It's so corrupted and awful. All that money went to support unions because unions were on the verge of crumbling under the economic crisis. So none of the infrastructure got put in place. It's shameful, criminal, really, if you ask me. I believe Donald Trump would actually spend the money on infrastructure. So that's something. And there's tons of other things. There's tons of other things that this guy would give a pound of flesh to the left for just to get something done. But I'm telling you, the impediment is not Donald Trump or the right. The impediment will be the left, how radical they've become. They're driven by a rabies-bitten, red-eyed madness towards their disdain for Donald Trump. And many of you watching this video, it's 24/7 free real estate in your head, Donald Trump. The media, Donald Trump. The madness, it's so transparent to anybody who isn't a part of that zombie mob. It's just, they can't see anything without seeing it through the spectrum and the prism of Donald Trump. And it takes their mind and their clear thinking and their common sense and even their strategic thinking. That's why he owns them. He owns the news cycle. He just owns them because they're obsessed. It's like a girlfriend who has an ex-girlfriend who has lost her mind, taping weird Xerox pictures of his boyfriend and throwing darts and putting all kinds of red marks all over his eyes, and then the police come in and they find a ball of fingernails and she's just over in the corner just the left has gotten to be that level of madness, but they don't see it. They think it's completely justified. They're like, this man is madness, this man is Hitler. There's nothing too far over the line for the left to say about Donald Trump, because they've spun themselves into this degree of just anger, irrationality, irrational thinking, and it's all justified. It's all justified because they're stopping Trump. They're stopping this orange madman, and it's all justified. Whatever they do, any kind of thing they say, any kind of ridiculous, hyperbolic, hysterical, and then if you don't have that perspective, you look on these people and you think this person's clearly crazy. This person has lost their mind. Not in every way. I'm not besmirching them as a person. I'm saying in this capacity, in this area, they've lost their mind. And they have. It's just amazing to see it. Anyway, if they could just self-correct that one thing, if they could stop seeing everything through the prism of Donald Trump and just start thinking clearly, they would be much more effective. But the Cortezes have taken over the party. Lastly, and this is a little caveat, and come up with this theory, and it holds water, and this goes back 15, 25 years, something like 25 to 15 years, 15 to 25 years. This theory's been in the work. The left is essentially a group of projection artists. And I would challenge the more libertarian, conservative, or even moderate people watching this video to put this theory to the test. When you hear the left complain about something, or when you hear the left accuse, that's a really big, when they just throw out arbitrary accusations, what is actually happening is that's all like cover fire for things that the left is actually doing. So when the left is actually guilty of something, they start accusing, just indiscriminately accusing everybody. It's sort of like muddying the water in a creek so that you can't see anything and you can't distinguish anything. And I mean this. So leading up, I listen to a lot of NPR. I listen to almost exclusively NPR, even though it's just left-wing propaganda. I listen to it a lot for my own personal reasons. And the left is race obsessed, obviously. And NPR is race obsessed to padded room sedative level. But I think they're race obsessed because they themselves, and I really believe this, internally they're wrestling with racial problems. I mean, I think this is true. And I've even discovered this in my micro life, my personal relationships. I myself don't hardly see race, and I don't talk about race a lot because it's actually not an issue. It's not an issue in my heart. I do have problems. I have problems with my character. I have things that I'm trying to improve as a person. But this isn't one of them. Because I've had conservative politics, I get accused of this crap all the time. But I examine myself soberly and honestly, and I know it's not true. So I disregard it. It's like petals of water, beads of water. It rolls right off me. The left is absolutely race obsessed. It's like shocking levels of race obsession. And I think it's because they see race, they see color. They look at people and they make assessments of their worth, their capability. That's why there's so much condescension towards minorities, people who aren't white minorities. I don't even know why we use that word because it's hardly true even statistically anymore, but they're just people, they're just Americans. But they're labeled, and there's a lot of reasons for this. One, I think there's psychological projection going on here. I really do. The left is compensating for their wine and cheese eating dinner parties where they condescend to anybody who doesn't live in a gated community, have a Harvard education, some elitist professor. They're the most racist people you'll ever meet. I'm dead serious. They don't see people as equals. They need to feed them like little chicks from their mouth. They're so condescending. That's actual racism anyway. There's that. But this is the newest one. You have all this in Georgia and Florida. You have all this voter corruption, just outright corruption. I think the woman's name is it's something like, I don't know, Sparks or something like that. That's not correct. But the woman's like a known criminal. She's like a known voter fraud criminal. And they're finding ballots, just hocus pocus finding ballots. They're not turning in voter totals. Just transparent criminality and voter shadiness. But what do you hear from the left leading up? What do you always hear from the left? Voter disenfranchisement, voter fraud, impediments to votes and election clarity. And the reason that they think that, what they mean by that is people like me think you should have to have an ID to vote, and a radical. You have to have an ID to do everything in life, but not vote. That's because these people want to cheat. And I know that everybody that's not on the left knows that. They want to cheat. The left is actually cheating at elections, and they're projecting that onto Republicans. And why? Because they are cheating. In their mind, think about it. I have a sibling who had a problem, still does have a problem, with theft. Now, this dude's obsessed with his things. He's always thinking somebody's going to take his things. And the reason he thinks that is because he's a thief. He takes other people's things. The left is obsessed with this. There's voter fraud. That's because they cheat. They cheat. The stuff that's going on in Florida, this is transparent cheating. They're going to try to do it in Georgia. Al Franken, I encourage you, 2018, or I think it was 18. No, 2008. Al Franken won an election in Minnesota. They cheated. They just found votes in somebody's trunk. It just so happened to put this guy over the top. They just found. By the way, I challenge you. Look for an example of the other way around. Where do Republicans ever just find votes? I don't know. This woman. And by the way, I think I did some research. This woman goes back to like Parkland. There was a bunch of elections, local elections in Florida. There's just so much shadiness in this woman's past. The left does cheat, and I'll tell you why they cheat. Because to the left, and this is another thing I've realized through personal relationships, the ends justify the means. So conservatives like myself, a more conservative ideological approach to governance, and specifically in this case, Donald Trump and the right, they're not the opposition to them. They're not a different way of looking at the world. They're evil, and they have to be defeated by all means necessary. So if you have to cheat, you're actually doing something good in the leftist mind. You're doing something good because you're stopping these evil people from being in power. So it's like, you know, you're not cheating. You're like a righteous martyr, and it's true. And even people listening to this video that are on the left, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, that's true. And I know that because I have leftist friends. They don't see the right as a righteous opposition, just people like them that have different political ideology. They see them as Nazis. I know that because they call them that with their own mouth. Why wouldn't you cheat to stop a Nazi from getting political power? Of course you would. That's how they see it. So here's the point. When the left projects, when they say something, when they accuse people of something, it's an examination of their own heart. That leftist is dealing with that. That leftist has struggles with that thing in their heart, and they're projecting that onto other people because they presume that's happening with other people because it's happening in their own heart. That's true. Take it easy, Breakfast Club. Thanks for taking the time to listen to that. Cheers. By the way, we should do some topical ideological discussions. I would really enjoy that. Take it easy.